So a bunch of people asked about Cargo versus Semantic MediaWiki. This is kind of for a limited audience. It's people who know about Semantic MediaWiki but don't know as much about Cargo, or know about both but aren't sure about the differences between the two. I'm just going to assume everyone knows about Semantic MediaWiki for the sake of this talk. So this is I'm doing excerpts from a talk I gave in October in 2015. The Cargo has improved quite a bit since then, but the basic rationale behind it is the same. Some of you were there for that. Make this a little smaller. Semantic MediaWiki, I think it's overly complicated because it's actually stored in MySQL most of the time. Sometimes it's stored in a triple store, but most of the time it's stored in MySQL, which is intended to hold tables. But it's actually representing a graph structure within those tables. It's a virtual pseudo triple store. But then in turn, that fake triple store is representing a table structure, because most of the time people are storing template data, which is very well structured. So it's it's two levels of abstraction or indirection, I guess. It does make it more complicated than it needs to be. Cargo is an extension that I created. Now it's a little over 2 years old. It's intended to be an alternative not just to Semantic MediaWiki, but also to all these other extensions, and there's a bunch of acronyms, but you've heard about some of these. It's basically all the ones that do the additional work of defining graphic display formats and drill down and all of that. So it works because it works in that it actually defines tables, not graphs. So each template, Infobox style template, has its own table where each call to that template defines one row in that table. And if there are multiple calls within the same page, each one gets its own row. So then the advantage of that is you have all these tables, you basically can call SQL around it. So Cargo doesn't actually let you directly call SQL, but its query language is really just a thin wrapper around SQL. So these are the parser functions. I won't get into any of those. That's how you declare data. I plan to, after the lightning talks, I plan to do a tutorial thing for Cargo and page forms, if anyone's interested, by the way. So we'll go over all of these. It's not as complicated as it looks. If you know about Semantic MediaWiki, Cargo has essentially the same set that Semantic MediaWiki does for displaying maps and calendars and bar charts and all that stuff. So the advantages are because it's one extension instead of around 15, literally. It's easier to install, so you don't need stuff like Composer to help you. It's just one extension. Some people like Composer anyway, but it's easier to understand for most people because most people already have experience with tables. People have experience with databases and SQL, but generally tables are just a more intuitive way to think about data. And as I mentioned in my talk on Wednesday, that you don't have the property pages, so everything's in one place in the template, which makes it easier to understand. For the same reason, it's easier to set up the data structures because you don't have those property pages, which means it can be even 5% or less of the overall number of pages. Sub-objects, that's a complicating thing in Semantic MediaWiki. It's not an issue within Cargo. I'm not going to get into why, but it's just one less thing to have to worry about. Filters, Cargo's filtering is smarter. It's automatically done versus in Semantic Drill Down where you have to define filters. As I mentioned, it's easier to set up queries because a lot of people already know SQL. It's more powerful querying for the same reason because Cargo can use all the functionality that's already defined in SQL, whereas Semantic MediaWiki, the developers, to their credit, had to invent an entire new query language. They did a great job, but it's not. It doesn't have all the many oh my God, the lots of functionality that SQL has. Um, actually, this one's no longer valid because you can do this in semantic media. But there's a whole bunch of things, even simple things like looking for values that have a blank, for fields that have a blank value. You can't do that in Semantic Media Wiki. That comes up on the mailing list quite a bit. In complex combinations of and or not. Oh man. Okay, well, yeah. Querying is faster. I ran a little test. It's not conclusive in any way, but I ran a test back when I had a wiki that was storing the same data with both systems, which you can do by the way, and it ran 50% faster than in Semantic Media, which isn't really a surprise. I mean, it's just doing direct SQL calls. And then finally, I think this is, oh, no, that's not the last thing. You can, because it's all stored in database tables directly, even outside of the Cargo code or the MediaWiki code, you can just run your own queries on that as you would with any other database table. It's more or less straight tables. There's some complications with like handling lists of values and stuff, but still, you can run queries in a much easier way than with Semantic Media Wiki. I mean, outside queries. And then this is more for developers. But I'm not the only developer even of Cargo. There's quite a bit of people who've contributed, some of whom are here. Yeah, it's just a lot easier to maintain. It's no longer 10,000 lines of code, but it's still quite a bit less than all of these others, just because it doesn't need to have that much because it uses the underlying database for almost everything. Okay, fine. Well, okay, yeah. There's some other. This one's no longer true. Cargo now stores page metadata also, just as Semantic Media Wiki does. Fine, I'll go through these. This is really the big thing. Arbitrary data. You can do free-form tagging with Semantic Media Wiki, not via templates. Most people don't do that, but if you do want to do that, you pretty much, unless you really want to do a hack, you pretty much should use Semantic Media Wiki. Yeah, hierarchical querying. This is something I really want to add to Cargo. But yeah, it is cool that with Semantic Media Wiki, if you have hierarchical categories, then you can query on world leaders and get people who aren't in the world leaders category but are in some subcategory of that. That's really something I want to add in. So yeah, this one, that's not an issue anymore. RDF storage, if you want to do that, all the capital S semantic stuff, that's only in Semantic Media Wiki. It could be added to Cargo in theory. This one's no longer valid because now there's the edit notify extension, which lets you also do that for non-SMW. Okay, that's a subject for another day. Yeah. Okay. That's it. Any questions? Yeah.
You said that when you install Cargo, it is one extension as opposed to a bunch of extensions.
That's right.
When you use Semantic, does this mean that Cargo includes, say, page forms and fill out all of this stuff as well?
Not page forms. That was never in either extension, but yeah, I don't know if you know about it. All these other extensions: semantic maps, semantic result format, semantic drill down, all of those. Yeah, yeah, it has equivalents for all of those.
But it uses equivalents. It does not actually just use the same.
No, it doesn't. It has equivalent code.
Of course, page forms can tie into Cargo because it does modify how the template is used. But all of the drill down functionality is used to either Cargo or Semantic.
Yeah, I mean, in the case of drill down, I basically just copied the semantic drill down code over into Cargo, modified it as appropriate. So they're similar, but it's still independent sets of code. Yeah. Tom. Yeah, sure. If you go to referata.com when it's up, it's usually up, but it's not the most stable system. That's the wiki farm that I run. It has both Cargo and Semantic Media Wiki installed on it. As far as I know, that's the only wiki farm that has both, or that has Cargo at all. But hopefully that'll change.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thanks. Oh, yes.
Recently, you requested a security review for page forms.
Yes.
thing to do that for cargo as well?
There was, well, it wasn't one I requested, but there was a security review done for it by someone who's knowledgeable, who found some issues, and those issues are fixed. Ironically, Pageforms has a lot more secure places where security vulnerabilities can happen, because it just has a lot more interaction with user interface type stuff. With Cargo, there's a much smaller place, but the issues can be much more severe. I mean, if someone can put in a delete star query into their query, that's really bad. There's a bunch of safeguards against that, and you can also set Cargo to use a separate database, not your main MediaWiki database, which is probably a good idea in general, for anyone using Cargo. And so there, even if people do something horrible, it's not going to affect anything other than your Cargo data, which can be recreated. Okay, thank you.